Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine Sundays. My name is Jamie Rich, and I'm delighted that you're here with us for this particular session, this particular gathering. We gather here every Sunday morning at this time to have a conversation around a topic. And as you'll notice, if you've been with us for a while or if this is just your first time, your participation in this conversation is the most integral part of what we do here every Sunday. If you're watching this on the Breakthrough Show Network right now, you're invited to listen if that's what you'd like to do. Put some comments in the chat as we go, and we'll put those into our conversation. Or if you'd like to join us in our room here in our magical world on the Ripley environment, you can do that at rsslive.org. So, as always, our question that our inquiry for this week is usually built around something that has been emerging as part of our discussions. And last week we were talking a little bit about the reflective work that people do, right? You're learning your truth, you're doing all of your work. So why is it that someone else can come along and trip you up in your process, right? And oftentimes you'll be getting opinions that are coming at you when you're doing anything that may be changing you and your world and your perspective. But it's important for you to remember that not all opinions are created equal. Um, Most arrive kind of as projections dressed as advice, right? And judgments, wearing the costume of care or something along. But it's really important that you recognize that those things don't belong to you. But there are opinions that do come through another door. That's the feedback that you've been looking for. Those little golden gems, maybe some of which you'll hear in this room this morning, that begin to integrate with who you are. So, our question for this particular day is, when do others' opinions belong in your truth? Because it's real easy to adopt this sort of independent mindset that says, well, what you think of me is none of my business. But if you maintain that mindset, well, that's just somebody else's opinion, you're missing some really important, valuable gemstones from people who are gathered with you. And one of the things that I like to do in this particular room, since this is part of the gathering, is I always know that there are going to be gemstones based from this particular group that we're gathering with today. Good morning to all of you as well.
Good morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
How's everybody doing this day?
Well, I made it through the storm last night, so yay.
Well, that's something you and Ray have in common, right? Ray had a big storm this week. So we had a big storm in our neck of the woods, as they say around these parts. And we have some people joining us in the studio today, but saying you're always very good about getting us centered as part of a discussion. So help us understand this difference between a trusted mirror and someone else's projection on us. When do others' opinions really belong in our truth?
Oh, this is such a fun topic. It's so fascinating because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about all the different ways um that people have spoken truth. And I'm going to use my friend Lorene as an example. She always I remember I was in a relationship, and she would say, I would call her all the time, telling her all these different things. And one day I said, I'm just so tired of talking about this over and over and over with him, like all the time. And she said, are you tired of talking about it yet? And I was like, hmm, right? One, it was a question, but it was also her experience of what also was happening in the situation, right?
Hmm.
And for her to be able, one, to even say that and be where I'm not like, it was the truth. Was I tired of it? I am tired of it. Clearly, I said I was tired of it, but it had now had to be reframed for me in a different way.
Yeah.
But had I been maybe 3 years before that or whatever, at that time, I didn't go off because Lorene and I have the like, we're like this. But if you have someone that says something like that and you're not like that, or they just say it that way, it's a truth and you get mad. right? Because I can see myself going, "What?" and hanging up the phone. Like, just going, "No, there's no way." Notice I did like this too, by the way, but anyway.
Well,
Uh,
you've already nailed some really important things that we can use for our conversation going forward. One was the fact is you want to make sure that that feedback is coming from someone who sees you.
right.
That's a
Absolutely.
central part of it because if it's
Yep.
if it's their projection and it came also in the form of a question, which
Mhm,
was, are you ready to let go of that, right? And secondly, there isn't that emotional trigger of resistance to it, right?
mhm.
Because sometimes, somebody does come up to you and they're saying something to which you're still not ready for that particular response. Is that ringing true a little bit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because then I mean, there are times when people will ask those types of questions, right, where I am sitting there going, "Is this true?" Like, that really, like, gets me very frustrated, and I
Mhm,
will say
mhm,
that, um even my daughter has asked me one time, for example, she's asked, "Have you ever" what was the question exactly? Like, "Have you ever been able to be on your own without, the help of other people in certain ways?" Right?
mhm.
Like, so when you're able to have those types of people who are asking you those potent questions that allow you to, I think, dig deeper into self,
Right.
then you're able to pinpoint those for sure.
Right. If you're just joining us, our conversation topic is this morning, when do others' opinions belong in your truth? And so, as we're working through that, I want to make sure, again, you guys all have a standing invitation to put some comments in the chat. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, we'll bring those in because I'm sure there's a lot of times when you've been able to understand what the difference is between somebody just going on about themselves, right? Projecting judgments onto you and
Mhm.
when it's actually been a valid opinion. Ray, was there something that you wanted to say in response to this initial stuff?
Yeah, what Sang brought up reminded me of a friend that's long since moved away, and he would always interject in something we were talking about from a shared perspective.
Mhm.
He would basically say, "You know what? I've seen this," and then it would always lead to a question, or "What does that mean for you?" Or it wasn't an imposed
Mhm.
opinion. It was, "This is what I've seen," or "This is what I'm thinking," or "Have you considered this?" So it will always open-ended
Mhm.
rather than a closed, "You
Mhm.
need to do this."
Right.
So I think, and what struck me is I've not seen that a lot
Hmm.
from
Mhm.
others.
Yeah,
Right.
and
Right.
it's partially because of what we were talking about last week, which was because most of the time we go into judgment.
Mhm.
Most of the feedback that we receive from other people is really their judgment, either of what we've done, how they would have handled that situation, right? And
Mhm.
it's hard. I mean, it is really hard to filter through that, especially when you're on a new path. But that's why I thought it was important to call out as we go through this.
Right.
And
Right.
and again, that's why I think it's important right now we get some feedback. Ollie, feedback from you. I mean, maybe you're one of those people, Ollie, who's gone through life in which no one has ever projected a judgment on you, in the and that every little bit of advice that you received from the world was just like, oh, thank you for that perspective.
Right.
What rings true for you in this question?
Well, first, Jamie, thank you for your sense of humor. And hi, everyone. You are also welcome to comment in the chat. Really blessed once again to see you, Jamie, and also Sang, Ray, and also welcoming Shadows, Shadows Pub. I think first, tapping into the language, opiniare in Latin, think to judge, to suppose. And I think it's all about what do we accept. And at certain point, I'm going to be 15 in 7 days. So at a certain point, I am more aware to differentiate myself. But at some point in my early age, I tend to accept everything that everyone is telling just for attachment, belonging, and to also probably not bother other people. But no, it doesn't mean that I'm going totally to say to you, oh, I disagree, but it means that I'm more also choosing our battle, because if we are going to disagree with everything that happens everywhere, every day to everyone, whew, so I think the most important is to choose our battle and to see what is ours, because really, what is our experience versus what are projecting others, because we are all born pristine in a new vessel, and then the external is projecting on us, and we are sponges. So it's my take until now, and I'm really happy to see shadows here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And maybe we'll get Shadows to chime in here, on this subject as we're moving forward. A lot of what you were saying, Ollie, there were a lot of words in there, and I mean that in a nice way, that are important for people to kind of work through in this particular process, because this feedback is coming to us at all times, right? And there's the over identification to it, but what's really been helpful for me is to recognize that to pick those people that you do surround yourself with so that you can listen to them, right? But I guarantee you, and maybe there's somebody in who's listening to this on YouTube who wants to chime in on this. There are sometimes people that you're around all the time who you think you're getting trusted advice from, and they're also feeding into a definition of who you no longer are. Saying, does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, but I think, yes, absolutely. Because and I think that's when you think about your friendships. You think about your friendships and you think about how you've moved through life. If you do some reflective moments and go through life and think about who had impacts and who did you outgrow? Who did you just gradually stop talking to, or different things like that, or you don't think about, or just things of that nature, because there are times when you go through different phases because they just don't align anymore. I think where we are now, and I know for myself, is I'm becoming much more aware of who I'm and being selective in terms of who is around, right? I mean, this is that old gym that that was always said that your net worth is the 5 people that surround you or whatever, and then you think about the 5 people that you talk to all the time, and if you start looking and really truly looking at the values, or what are you getting from these people every day that you're interacting with on a daily basis, what does that look like for you? And I think being able to pull that in, and I think, even back then they say that, but did we take it serious? Now we're more conscious and selective in terms of how we're choosing and making decisions, where a lot of times, and it all depends on personality and positioning as well, because a lot of times people will go in and then others will say, well, you're just being selfish.
Right.
And it's, no, I'm not being selfish. I just choose not to.
Right. Well, and again, you've hit again on the central theme of all Rise and Shine Sundays conversations, which is taking that pause, right? To be able to sort of just all of a sudden go, wait, okay, there's different feedback coming at me, right? There's these different experiences. And instead of being in that reactive mode where I'm like, okay, wait, is this truly valuable to me? And the courage it takes sometimes to take a pause is important too. I know that there was, when we're talking about this whole idea of making sure we stay open to other people's opinions, because there are, if there's something called the geographic fix. Have you guys heard about this before? There's some people who will run away and like completely change their whole playground and playmates, right? To sort of cure things, but you can still bring all that past conditioning back into bearing. But if you recognize that part of the joy of life is beginning to take on new feedback, right? You can kind of grow where you are. You can bloom where you're planted if you stay open to new feedback, right? You don't have to do this geographic fix. Was I the only one who, when you tried on a different costume, you decided, well, you're going to wear your hair a little bit different, And some people, they like to provoke, right, to get that sort of feedback going. But part of that is shaking it up, right? And when we're shaking things up, yeah, the provocateur, right? Um, and I think that part of it is beginning to say, all right, you're aware that you can change your opinion of yourself, right? But how do you change that feedback loop that comes from other people? And Ollie used a keyword, which is how much do you identify with what somebody else is saying, right? And then, there's that kind of weird thing where you go, well, gosh, that person just said, well, how long do I want to hang on to this? Well, I get to ask myself that question. So there's an empowerment moment there, right? Saying, did you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, it's such a it's such a fun topic for me because I can just think about the millions of times that society puts labels on us, and but we also attach ourselves to certain labels. And I know for myself, if I went into spaces and automatically said I was a single mom, all hell broke loose. Right? It was this. She has how many baby daddies does she have? How many this does she have? She must be on welfare. She must be this, or, just kind of depending on different things. And did I attach myself to the label? Yes and no. So my thing was I never walked around saying I'm a single mom. This is what I do. I'm not like a woe is me type thing, right? It also depends on the positioning of it. And I think empowering and coming and saying, okay, yes, I'm a single mom. That's a fact, right? And then it becomes, and then everyone goes to, well, what kind of single mom are you? What are we doing here? Right? It is, but it comes down to there's judgment. There's always this automatic judgment, just like there's automatic judgment when people visually, and this is just visuals that we get opinions. People are giving us opinions off of, right? Once that people will see and learn, obviously, that I'm Asian, they're like, oh, she's automatically great at math, right? I don't like math. Like, I personally do not like math. And then the joke, and then I turn it into a fun joke. And I would always say, yeah, I don't really, me and math don't get along. However, I do know how to count my dollar bills, right? So you got to make something fun out of what it is that still includes math, but it's not, I'm not up there, doing all kinds of things. So I think understanding self, but also understanding that, there's opinions. And I know there was something that I was going to mention earlier too, is there, again, back to the single mom. I remember giving a speech, come off the stage, and the lady says to me, well, wouldn't your life be better if you had a husband? And I, in true saying fashion, I was like, well, how's your husband? I mean, I don't know. Tell me how yours is. Like, how do they work? Do they do what they say they're going to do? I don't, so in my head, because, but you don't expect that.
Right.
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 And when you're not expecting something like that, it's either you are going to be triggered by it.
Right.
Which I was not. I just giggled and laughed at her. I was like, that's really cute.
Well,
but I did ask her about her husband because it's, one of those things.
Right. Well, people are just joining us in the conversation. If you have some thoughts about this, our topic today is revolving around other people's opinions, right? And their value. I want to give everybody kind of a little test, right? And I call it the orange socks test, right? And if I come up to you and I say, Ray, I really was listening to everything you had to say, but those orange socks that you had on were just, I can't stand orange socks. I don't know why you were doing a whole presentation with orange socks on. And in your heart that you don't have orange socks on, right? I mean, you're so solid in the truth that, wait, I can look down at my socks right now and they're brown. Why is this person telling me that I've got orange socks on? And the orange socks test is a really important part of accepting other people's feedback about you. Oftentimes, when someone comes up to you after a speech and says, well, wouldn't you be much happier than delivering these talks in public if you had a husband? Oftentimes, that's done specifically to pass judgment. It looks like care. It looks like what's going on. And that is an orange socks moment, right? If there is some part of you that isn't healed about whatever that judgment brings, it's going to create some kind of, oh, well, I guess they really did see some. Maybe I shouldn't be talking in public anymore. I should be focusing on getting a husband, right? And that's the trippy part of getting messed up. I know a lot of people who do a lot of really good work who, instead of looking at all of the good comments and feedback that they get from, there was that one person who said, well, you're old and fat, and I don't really know why anyone would listen to you. And until you can kind of get past that as an orange socks moment, that focus is oftentimes our focus gets robbed and we go to that moment. Am I the only one that this has happened to?
I think it's happened in more subtle ways for me, is where it's an attempt at distraction, and it's many things. I think that I felt it was either a provocation, a distraction, or a way to say, "Hey, I know better than you do." So it's interesting to see that it is a technique. It may not be as direct as the orange socks, but I think people do use it.
Well, I throw the orange socks in as a reminder that that's when you're really clear that you're not wearing orange socks, right?
Yes, exactly.
If
Yeah,
I
no, great
said
example.
to,
Yeah.
if I wanted to, say, well, Jamie, you look crappy in black. Well, I have black on, right? But I have to be able to say what, one of the things that I've learned in my 107 years on the planet is I'm not here for the visual impact.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think that, if you think that part of it, I'm not as concerned about my appearance more than I am concerned about my ability to be coherent, hold a conversation, and to, really be my authentic self. Saying you had something that you wanted to add to that?
It takes me back to it's about appearance. It takes me back to, again, it must have something to do with me being on the stage. Because I was handling a global entrepreneur week class, and that you provide feedback, and this lady sent feedback, and her feedback was, and I quote, because I had to go look it up real fast. I got a sad face, because they'll give me a sad face. And I was like, why did I get a sad face? And it said I couldn't get past her unprofessional experience. I should have I ran to the closet to go get you the shoes that I had on, because that was what it comes down to. But I ended up writing this lady back, though, right? Because I wanted to know what about my appearance that I knew was top notch, what was not sitting well with her. Like, I wanted to know that for myself, right? Because I also, again, it's about positioning, because I said I'm continuously looking for ways to tweak and improve and help people I meet to feel inspired, valued, loved, and appreciated. Would you be willing to share your specific feedback regarding my unprofessional appearance? Right? And she responded, which I loved. She said, I loved your glittery shoes. They were not glitter, by the way, but that's not here nor there. But because I'm a quote unquote dress for success generation, I respond better to more professional attire.
Wow. So again,
what she did say, she says, the problem is probably more mine than yours.
good. She owned it.
Right. Right.
And that's pivotal, because some people, now remember, some people are deeply conditioned. Like if you ask for feedback, like if I say, well, I'd like to have some feedback about this, a lot of people already have their knives sharpened because it's their chance to be critical.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people who are critical by nature, and they believe that their feedback in being critical is somehow helpful. And again, I may be the only one in the world who has ever experienced this, but oftentimes when people are critical, they're coming from a perspective that, just like that woman admitted to, says more about them than you. Like if somebody says and provides feedback and they say, well, I don't like that. I don't.
What did you like?
Well, that's okay. Well, what do you like? Which is the perfect comeback to it, because no matter how hard you try to make fish beef, if you don't like fish, it's never going to be beef, right?
Right.
And yet we do that to people. Ali, I see you laughing. Is there anything that chimes in from your world when people have offered more? They feel like feedback is criticism, and it's an opportunity for them to dissect you.
Well, thank you. I was waiting patiently my turn. I think it's also about opinions of others. Are they there to be constructive or destructive? Because at some point maybe they want to help, quote unquote help, but there is also their past, their projection. Like as we are all different, so what I see from Sang or for Jamie might not really be adequate in my own aquarium, in my own value. But then it's like, are they aware enough, informed enough to wrap this appropriately, or are they like projecting without any filter, without we really like a passive aggressive, like, oh, I think it's like every one of us is a kind of a chemical element.
Right.
And so some elements are reacting to each other. Some elements are, and it's about being informed when we are. And also, the first thing I was thinking about that is to have to allow them permission. So can I give you feedback?
Correct.
Because at some point, if we are just saying like this, is like and what if they are not willing to receive that
Right.
feedback? So thank you.
Let's unpack this for a second, and maybe if Shadows, if you'd like to chime in, at any time, please feel free to do so. Those of you who are maybe listening in the YouTube network for the Breakthrough Show Network, can put some comments in the chat. What are those rules of engagement that make the feedback loop more constructive? Right. First of it, I've heard Ali say one thing is it invited? Is your feedback invited?
Mhm.
Right? That's one. And we also, one of the things that we talked about is, in addition to it being invited, are you really seeing the person, or are you really speaking from your own personal preference? So those are my two things that I would want to add. If we're going to be helpful to each other in terms of providing that feedback, invitation, and making sure that it is something that is about what you see and you observe. Are there some other rules of engagement when providing feedback that anyone would care to chime in on? Or stories where it didn't work?
I mean, my invitation is always to, like, to know when or how to ask a question, if to even know one, why do you want to give the feedback? That's the start there. Like, is it going to help them, or does it make the problem bigger, or does it make it smaller, as my sister would say? But also, it could be a form of positioning. Is it in your, this is where some variables come into play, right? And are you an expert, or you have experience in XYZ place, or are you able to then ask a question in a way that says, hey, if you want help with that, I have some resources for you, or something of that nature, right? Where you can still offer something where you're not maybe giving direct, unless it's just something, for me, I would say something very detrimental, and be like, I don't think that.
Yeah.
What, or if someone asks for generic feedback, right? That's the other thing. When people just say, can you tell me what you think? And I might go, well, the sky is blue. And Jamie's like, that's not what I wanted to know. Well, you just asked me to tell you what I think. You didn't ask me anything else. What do I think about what? And I will ask people when they're asking for feedback for something, what is it exactly are you asking me for? My first impression? Do you want me, how does it make me feel? Like, what, so I think also being able to know that, and that aspect from a feedback perspective, because just like when I talked to the lady, it was like, how's your husband? Like, I don't, now it's an opportunity to have a conversation with, tell me how my husband would make my life easier.
Right.
Because your husband
Right.
may make your life
Right.
easier.
all of those words that all of what you're talking about circles around the whole idea of validation for me, which means, when you're offering feedback, validate something in the very beginning. As opposed to, well, I really enjoyed your presentation, right? And then use the question, right, as opposed to going into the judgment.
Yeah.
And I'm really open. I don't know. I don't have my eyes on the chat. If anyone's putting something in, raise their. We've got some other techniques to sort of make sure that feedback loop that we're providing, not only like we're going to model right now what we want to be able to do as far as providing the right feedback for folks that we want to help, right?
Yeah, I think when Sang was giving her examples, I think what immediately came to mind is seeking clarification.
Yeah.
What is the question? Like, I don't understand. The individual may have formulated or phrased something. Was that an attempt at being helpful, or was it an attempt to shadow his foot, a default to go to the negative? Or I like the idea of seeking clarification by asking more questions, opens it up to find out whether the person is just being
Well, yeah.
mean, or is actually looking to provide something. Like when you said with professional attire, well, okay, you meant to say that it was a distraction for her, whatever, or she didn't like it. So say that is this, I don't like people who present themselves a certain way, instead of formulating or wrapping in something. I'll toss it back
I
to
want to I
Ollie
want to hold
or
off on Holly
Jimmy.
because something you said,
Oh,
something building from shadows. Hang on, Holly, for just a second. So oftentimes people think that being critical is important, right? And that for some
yes,
odd reason, remember when we talked about the whole thing about the devil's advocate? Like, well, I'm going to play devil's advocate with you for a while. I'm going to start saying all sorts of mean, horrible things to you, as if there is value in
exactly.
meanness. And I think that's part of, it can be reactive. We can say, well, man, you look really bad in that dress. Are you sure that that's what you really wanted to do? Because we think that somehow being critical is like revelatory, right? But it's actually sometimes just leveraging more cruelty at someone. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be part of more cruelty, right? So we've talked about the invitation. We've talked about this idea that when you're providing feedback, it we well, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to be purposely negative to you because I think there's value in it. Ollie, are there some more things that we're not like could be some things to be reminded of when we're looking about other people's opinions and the way in which we lob them at other people?
Well, first, I allow you to express. I will pardon you French, as you said, but I'm more aware about some expressions like throwing the baby with the bath, whatever, and it really matters for me. So, but I resonate with what Shadows was writing in the chat. It's often a default to go to the negative, because I've studied neuroscience and I realized that the brain is more toward the thread than the reward. So we tend to think more about the negative, and it takes awareness to say, okay, what is the positive? It's like the feedback sandwich. I would say more like 80% of positive and 20% on negative, to empower the other person. Another thing I was thinking about is that no matter what happens, it's only what we can control. So we are aware, of course. I think our audience is aware about a lot of things, but we will meet people that are in their reptilian brain, in their amygdala, and it's about how to navigate with what they say. And when I give feedback, it's about also asking ourselves powerful question: is it okay? So, woohoo! For instance, this one was triggering me a bit like cortisol, because I was shifting to another scene. But it's okay. What is it okay for me to express that? Is it valuable? Is it kind? Is it helpful for the person? Oops. Once again, and then the last thing that I was thinking also: am I safe? That's also something that is interesting. Am I safe to express this feedback, opinion, or because when I reveal something to another one, I reveal a bit of my personality, and I don't talk anything to anyone because I want to be safe. that's what I would like to share while you are shifting
Yeah,
lots
while
of
I'm shifting around, that was
yeah.
completely accidental. You know, the interesting thing about sometimes being in the studio is that you have the power to shift people.
You've
But
got the power.
um, you know, that sense of safety again, we talk about this all the time, right? You know, but um, are you in your feedback creating a situation of safety with what you're providing, right? um, and I think one of the things that I've learned from Ray, one of the things that I've learned through these discussions is the importance of modeling, not like as in modeling clothes or something along the line. Yes, I've discovered that I need to be a fashion model, but one of the things that's really, really important is modeling the behavior that we want to provide to other people, right? You know, it's being able to be proactive. And you're saying, I've heard you do this lots of times when you talk about your work with your children. You know, none of us can control how we were raised, but we can certainly, if we take the pause, begin to think about how we would like to parent. And so we're constantly going to be receiving judgment for other people. There's going to be, you know, shitty comments that are made about us, you know, perhaps. But in other words, what are we modeling? And the reason why I think this is so important is the way in which we provide feedback to others is also the way in which we can receive that feedback. And you know, there are people that, and again, I may be the only one in this room that wants to speak to this, but it's very hard for me to be around people who are so super critical because I know that that's the same lens that they're using on themselves, right? You know, if you're that hypercritical about other things that are going around you, it's very hard. It's like, wow, that judgment and critical and that meanness lives inside you all the time, right? And so my best response to that again is to model the behavior that I want to be, right? So again, saying I'm looking at you just because I feel like there's something
Oh, yeah.
that's going to
There's
spew out
so
from you that's going to
Yeah,
um,
there's so many stories. Well, what I want to say, there's something I will. One of the best compliments I've ever received was about my parenting with my children, was because she said to me, "I just love how you're forward thinking with parenting. Um, you're very conscious of what you're saying and very mindful of what's being said and how I handle certain situations because I." For myself was their father was not in the picture,
mhm,
so there was not a male figure in the picture, but I was very adamant about telling my children, I am not a dad. I am not your dad. I'm not a dude. I can't tell you about dad things. I can only do the best I can in this space. And I think being able to be honest, because society tells them to expect me to be a mom and a dad. I am not a dad, right? And so being very clear about that with my children was very helpful for our relationship. And it for me, it always came down to giving my kids a space to share who they were, their opinions of things, what wasn't working for them in the household. I don't have to abide by it because I'm the mom,
right.
but I still get to hear the opinions of the household to say, okay, well, maybe they don't like it that they do the laundry at this time or whatever. But again, being able to have that conversation has always also opened the door for my kids to be respectful in how they talk to people. Like, and it comes off to others as rude, but my kids are asking questions for clarity,
Mhm,
and it's more of, okay, well, tell me how that works, or tell me this and tell me that, because it just provides that. So, and I remember, and then the other aspect, there was another story there, Jamie. I know there was, but I can't remember at the moment.
well,
But
hold on
yeah,
it for a second, because I think that one of the important things that you brought up is about listening, right?
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and Ray, I'm going to want to, if you would be able to bring in some of the comments that are in the chat that I can't see at this particular point in time.
Sure.
One of the things that I think is so important is when you're when you're receiving other people's opinions, when they're coming at you, right, is to take some time to sort of listen, see if they do apply to you, right?
Mhm.
And then recognize that oftentimes when those projections are coming at you, those are reflections of their opinions about what you're doing, and those have nothing to do with you. I'm
Correct.
assisting a really good friend of mine who is wanting to make a move to a retirement community. And some
Mhm.
of his friends are being really particularly brutal with him. I'm allowing this to sort of see where he wants to go with it because that's my sort of responsibility in the relationship. But what I've learned in this process is that oftentimes what people are offering my friend as an advice is really their fears about this particular situation for them. What's coming up alive in the chat, Ray?
Shadows provided clarification of what she meant in her initial comment. And when her initial comment was, it's often a default to go to the negative, and I didn't quite understand it as much as what she intended. And then her response was, my comment about going to the negative was in regard to when other people give a mix of opinions, we often go to the negative first and take it too much to heart. So
Mhm.
lots of stuff wrapped up in that. So
Yeah.
I thought that was
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
And that oppositional energy, and we've talked about the importance of getting 360. Well, if somebody says, well, you're a jerk, well, let me look at that for a second. Nope, not true.
Oh,
Oh, she's raising
Shadows.
it.
Yeah.
Please feel free to emerge, and there you go. Turn the
There
mic
you
on, say what you'd like to say.
Okay,
Actually, I wanted to make a comment, somewhat directed to Sang.
Yes.
It takes an incredible amount of strength to be a single parent in this society,
Thank you.
because not only do you have your child to deal with or children, you've got a lot of uninvited BS coming
Yeah.
from other people. I've
Absolutely.
watched this. Artemis was a single parent at a very young age. She's been in a relationship for many years, but I watched her through that period of being a single parent, and that crap that came at her was just unbelievable. And some of it came from within the family.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's just too much to deal with. So my hat's off to you, Sang.
Thank you, Shadow. Thank you.
And thank you for that comment, Shadows. One thing to ask when those comments are coming at you is a very important thing that maybe some of you will want to write down. And it is the question, who does this belong to?
Mhm. Mhm.
And 9 times out of 10, what Shadows is talking about is so clear that oftentimes those judgments belong to the sender and not the recipient. And that's when,
Oh,
it's very hard to be around that judgmental energy that's present all the time. So, did that help trigger the story that you wanted to share with us, Sang?
no, not really, but but my kids have always been able to come to me and talk to me. The relationship I have with my kids right now, I don't know. And the thing is, I have nothing to go off of, right? Because my mom passed when I was 27. So I don't know what these adult relationships and adult parent conversations even look like. My friends have them, but then I hear it's like being pregnant. I feel like you hear all these horror stories, right? You're like, oh, I don't want that, right? So how do you navigate different things? And I think even my daughter being able to ask questions and my son being able to ask me questions and not feel that judgment from me is huge for me, right? Because I never want them, and I think that's how you set it up is I never have wanted my children to not be able to come talk to me about anything because the world will lie to them. And
Mhm.
I've told them that. The world will lie to you. I'm not saying that everything is, everyone's going to lie to you because you have to, that's where discernment comes in.
Yeah.
But truly knowing that they can come here and I'm going to be straight up and honest with them about what life is like.
Mhm.
People are hateful,
Right.
right? People
Right.
do say mean things and things like that. So
We have some good feedback coming in on the YouTube channel, so pardon me while I read it for a second. I think it's very important to realize whose applause matters. Are the
yeah.
intentions of the person giving you feedback? What are their intentions? Are they trusted friends with integrity who know you well? And there's a magical word that we haven't used, and which is integrity. Being able to sort of
Mhm.
recognize, and there's the other important word in there, which was trusted. you know I trust. One of the things that's really important that I appreciate from all the people who are assembled in this room today is I trust your feedback.
Mhm.
And I think that's an important thing to know, that that trust relationship is a two-way street, right? And so it's something to be protected, because part of it centers in what we've talked about before. Um, you want what's best for the individual, but you recognize that Sang's journey is very different from Ollie's, very different from Shadow's, very different from Ray's. So for me to impose what I think about my life on any one of the four of you is completely inappropriate, right? It is not, that's not acting out of integrity for me to say, well, saying for me, or my observations about single mothers have been whatever. That's really out of integrity, and recognizing that difference.
Mhm.
What emerges for anyone, please? In that feedback, Ollie, go ahead.
Yes, I would like also to say about do you know the metaphor of the crab basket, where all the crabs are in the basket, and as soon as the crab tries to get out, the other crab says, "Stay, stay, stay, stay with us." So that's what I'm experiencing, because since few weeks and months I'm with my dad, caring for him. And but now I feel like less safe, less comfortable to be in the Sunday cafe with him, uh, because there are others, and I don't feel safe there, and so I go to the nature. Well, I came back, and then my dad told me what's happened, and there are people that says, "Where is Oli? Where is Oli? I miss Oli." Blah blah blah. But well, Oli is better regulated in nature for a few hours, and at some point it's Oli's choice. But it's like there will always be have like it's a bit weird metaphor, but always be having crabs trying to get in their basket, so that you are they feel more comfortable knowing that you still think about them. So
Yeah.
differentiation is so important.
Yeah.
Differentiation.
I love those perspectives. And I have to admit, for a nanosecond, my old man ears heard crap basket, CRAP. And and I thought, well, we have a word here, for the crap basket, which is the toilet. And sometimes when you get some of these feedback from other people, they do belong in the crap basket. And it's important to flush those things out. So
Now,
I
what's funny, Ollie's telling that story, and I'm hearing crabs, right?
right.
And he's talking about the crab who's trying to get away, and everybody's trying to keep him. And I'm like, I'm the crab that's like the pioneer, like, let's get out of here. We
Right.
no longer belong in this thing anymore. I love that.
That's what happens on Sunday mornings on Rise and Shine Sundays. There's always something fun that emerges from a conversation. We are always continuing to invite your feedback. We're wrapping into our kind of home stretch here. So have we kind of looked at this topic enough? Is there something else that someone else would like to add as we're talking about the idea of again, welcoming trying to understand what that difference is between when others' opinions belong in your truth? Because again, I think sometimes you can shut it out. We shut ourselves off from feedback because we've been hurt about it in the past. But there's some really, really valid things. And we've talked about it's how that feedback comes to you, right? It's recognizing that if it's done out of meanness, if it's done out of judgment. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't need any more meanness and judgment in my life. Ray, do you need some extra meanness or judgment?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Does it resonate? Does that resonate at all? In terms of recognizing, so much of the feedback is recognizing what you don't need, and then asking for what you do.
Yeah, it just occurred to me as everyone was sharing here is that we're all different. We all have different ways of coping.
Mm-hmm.
They're all good.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what I really appreciate from these exchanges is what I don't have with that friend from years ago is I'm getting perspectives. Your lives are different, but listening to your life examples and your understanding of what was going on is incredibly useful and but to use your term, Jamie, validating as well as comforting
Mm-hmm.
to hear that. Wow, that's really smart. That's great parenting. That's great understanding of elder care. At some point, you have to take care of yourself. There again, back to saying you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help others. So the sharing of perspectives, to me, is when you think about it, is what we're doing now is a unique way virtually, because we're connecting in on a whole bunch of different levels through YouTube and chat and live voice and presence, to actually expand our own experiences and understanding of how to receive this feedback. Because when you think about it, if I'm next time I'm listening to somebody and they're giving me their opinions, I'm going to say, oh, Sang had a really good point on that. So did Ollie, so did Shadows, and so did Jamie. So I'm already feeling better equipped. So sorry for the long.
No problem.
That's kind of what
You know,
what the value and the appreciation of what's just been shared in such a short period.
yeah, I'm gonna pull a Sang here for a second. I wanted to pull a story where, as the only gay man in this room, I've had people who've come up to me many times and say, judge my lifestyle or whatever, and they'll say things like, well, we'll pray for you, we'll pray that you find, whatever, and the best response to that is actually, well, thank you,
Right.
and I'll pray for
Thank
you as
you.
well. And because that diffuses all of that attachment right to it, right? And so that would be, well, okay, yeah, in my world, I want to be the part that says I want what's best for you. Now, I know that yours is coming through veiled of judgment, and you're trying to heap things on me, but I'm gonna, well, the expression, the word of the week is pull a Sang in this moment, and spin it, and then say back to, well, yeah, thank you for praying for me, and I will continue to pray for you.
And that's and I will say this, Jamie, that is the easiest way to let everyone sit in what was said, right? Is to just acknowledge it and say something, whether it's thank you or it's like, I love that. Thank you for saying that. Or just, I've never thought of it that way. I appreciate that response. Just kind of give them something that lets you sit with it, and you've owned that that's who they are. And because they could say that, and was like, and then it could, depending on your day, you could be like, why are you trying to convert me? Are you trying to do that? Like, what is that? Just go, thank you so much. And I think we don't do enough of accepting and just letting people be who they are, because they're just doing what they believe in.
Right.
They believe in that. They don't think, and they want to pray for you. And I go, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of the messages that we get around criticism are levied from bad messages that were given to us as children around judgment, right? Well, you can't really praise too much. Like, I can't sit and talk about all the nice things about Ray. It'll go to his head and he'll become an egotist. So
Right.
therefore, I've got to tell Ray all the things that are wrong with him, because, negative things help you grow, and it's like, what? And again, that's recognizing, something that was said in the chat, right? That it is the word, it is messaging with integrity. It is actually seeing the other person and recognizing that bringing your perspective is vastly different than bringing your judgment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But we're so often conditioned to do that judgment, So Stacy is saying hello to all of us. She has just emerged for the day, so we can all say hi back to Stacy. And we're, like I said, we're very grateful. We're coming up. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that we have been talking about this subject for a full hour, and we still have more to say about it. Are there some perspectives that we can kind of wrap in, or if there, yeah, Ollie, please.
Well, first, I would like to say thank you, Jessica, for hosting this show also, because it's all thanks for Jessica. And I think the most expression I will use is we should stand for love, even with a heavy heart, even with a, and it's about the words that you said like trust and also inspire, I think. I forgot my thought, but there was also diffuse the negative energy, not taking it our own, and infuse our response by questions and curiosity. I think it takes one person to de-escalate, because if there are always people that say no, 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 at some point it needs to be, because else it's a fight. So the world is so magic. Why wouldn't be in awareness and gratitude about what we can live right now? Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. I also want to encourage Shadows. If you'd like to weigh in on this feedback, please feel free at any time.
I was just thinking about your comment about the messages we get as children. One of my mother's favorite lines was, "You're too big for your britches." As I've got older, I've come to realize that just means I need to get bigger britches.
Right.
Wardrobe change.
I love that. And again, that's that 360 spin of the judgment, right? And taking it in. Ray saying, who's got a wrap up thought?
Ray, what you got anything, Ray?
Well, just loving the conversation, and one that we should maybe carry on is what you said, Jamie, about communicating with integrity, because to me that brought it all together. Is what saying Ollie, Shadows, and you, Jamie, brought together is, if we can just communicate with our true selves, but making sure that we are safe, and that we are seeking to understand and to be understood as well. So I think, wow, what a great word, integrity.
Right. So saying, what's our assignment for the week ahead?
Love the assignments, yes. And I've been thinking about it. My invitation to you this week is to pay attention to, and I think we kind of touched on this a little bit last week because we were talking about integrity and the judgment piece. But if someone says something to you that you feel is maybe off-putting or doesn't sit well with you, my invitation is to inquire kindly about, hey, and I have a it's called a mending conversation, right, where you can kind of go through a certain what's the word, scripts, so to speak, right, to have a conversation, to go through something where you're trying to get more understanding and clarity around something from both sides. And I think the other part, and I think this is something to kind of leave you hanging with, though, and be ready if they're not willing to have the conversation.
Yeah.
So, because that also is something to work to navigate through and journey through your emotions as well.
No, that's a wonderful perspective to be able to offer. And we've been talking the past couple of weeks about the integrity walk, incorporating, living your truth, those type of things. But now we're looking at this from a different perspective. Can we model the way in which we want to be able to receive feedback by the way in which we provide it? Are you actually seeing the other person? Is it done through invitation? Does it respect the integrity? Is it done specifically to levy judgment or meanness, or, and really then taking that wonderful pause to find out why you're offering that perspective in the first place, right? And when you begin to model it, you then are able to diffuse it better when those bombs get hurled at you, because there's nothing wrong with you if someone has come up to judge you. There are going to be shitty comments about you in the comments section, just because we live in a world where people are still, as Shadows was saying to us earlier, where they walk around with comments like, you're too big for your britches, right? And so it's my responsibility to bring you back down to earth and say that well, wait a second, we're all into some kind of weird model that doesn't really belong to you. So one of the questions you can also ask yourself is, who does this belong to? If you're the recipient of that particular bit of feedback, before you go in and say, am I really this person? Ask yourself, who did that belong to? And when you begin to model that as your behavior, it begins to open things up. So, I'm always so grateful for this conversation that we have around a topic where there is no sage on the stage giving advice, but just a collective respect for the collective truth that we get to explore. You're invited back here next week to be part of the wonderful programs that happen on the Breakthrough Show Network. If you'd like to join us in studio at any time, we're at rsslive.org. And if you even want to come in after the hour of the YouTube broadcast, where we sit and we unlock the magic for what we're going to maybe do next week, please feel free to do so. We thank everyone at the Breakthrough Show Network. We look forward to seeing everyone next week. And so on behalf of all of the guests who assembled here, thank you for waking up to what's emerging, and we'll see you back next week. Until then.